He's been interviewing high-performing people for the past couple of years, and he's here to talk about his book and his findings. Please welcome Timothy.
Hi, everyone. This is going to be the anti-tech presentation of the evening. I want to talk about cultivating extreme selective ignorance in a digital world where the norm is infinite interruption and infinite minutia. I'm not going to spend too much time on the problem because I think it's well known. This is how I used to feel every time I checked email and how I still feel every time I'm forced to hear another Don Imus story. So I've spent the last 2 years traveling through about 20 countries interviewing high performers, both entrepreneurs and employees in a digital world, and this is the finding: less is more. There's no possible way you can consume and organize the amount of information you would like to. So I'm going to discuss a few key findings that you can apply as soon as you leave this today. The first is called batching, and in brief, batching is performing like tasks at set intervals between which you let them accumulate. So in my case, I receive 1,500 to 2,000 email a week. I run a country that has distribution in about 15 countries. And I check my business email once every 10 to 14 days at this point. I don't expect you to get that extreme about it, but what I'd recommend you do is design an autoresponder that replies to everyone who sends you an email or a number of contacts that says, "Dear all, I'll be responding to email twice per day due to increased workload at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. If you require a response before one of those two times, please call me on my cell phone, 555-555-555. Use your real cell phone if you have one." Thank you very much for understanding. And that gives you the breathing room to focus on the important as opposed to manufactured emergencies, all right? And the big question is, of course, what if I miss something? Well, technically, you're giving people a way to get in touch with you. So usually, 9 times out of 10, it'll be someone else's fault. But from a practical standpoint, I've, in the last 6 years, never had a problem that cost more than $500 to fix, but I've had hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional revenue booked as a result of establishing this practice in my own company, among even my employees. So I'd encourage you to implement that sooner rather than later. The second principle that you can embrace is the 80-20 principle, or Pareto's principle, but instead of applying it to activities, so what are the 20% of activities that yield 80% of my desired results, you're going to apply it to people. So what are the 20% of the people in my corporate life or personal life who consume 80% of my time? And we can talk about bosses and colleagues, but that takes more time, so go to my website. But as it relates to clients and suppliers, this is how I applied it. So I had 120 wholesale customers worldwide, and they consumed about 60 hours a week. I did an 80-20 analysis, and I realized that 5 out of 120 customers were contributing more than 95% of my profit. And they were not the same 20% that were consuming 80% of my time. So in the worst cases, I fired a number of customers. I said, if we're going to continue to do business, we need to do it along these following guidelines. And in other cases, I put most of my minimally productive customers on autopilot. So I wouldn't chase them. I wouldn't call them to ask them how they were doing. If they've placed an order, fine. Otherwise, I would limit my contact. And I would encourage you to do the same. There are, again, case studies you can find on the website. The third thing that I'd like to talk about is outsourcing your life. So I have somewhere between 20 and 40 MBAs in India and Croatia and other places that essentially run my life for me, and they cost $4 to $5 an hour. So, and that's a good market value, and even people in English-speaking Canada who also cost $5 an hour. So, in case the English is a concern. What I'd encourage you to do is really calculate the value of your time. So if you make 50 grand a year, for example, chop off the last 3 zeros, divide that 50 in half, you make $25 an hour. That's the fastest way to figure out how much you make per hour. If you can pay someone 50% of that amount or less, try to outsource. The most common tasks are the most time-consuming. So any type of data gathering, any type of online research, creating spreadsheets, creating prospect lists, all that can be outsourced. I have people in multiple time zones, so I have people who I can actually call on a Skype number during the day, or I can give it to them at 5 p.m., and when I come in the next morning at 9 a.m., that work is all done, and it's in my inbox. So look at sites like GetFriday.com. GetFriday.com gives a free 7-day trial of outsourcing, so knock yourselves out. You can also go to Elance, Workaholics for Hire, things like that, workaholicsforhire.com. And just look for virtual assistants. And the last piece of this puzzle, which is so self-evident but so universally ignored, is that to establish work-life separation, which I would encourage you to think about as opposed to balance, which implies blending, you need to plan life. You need to schedule life. So if you just roll out of bed late on a Saturday and you decide you're going to check email for a second, like having one potato chip, you're going to spend 3 hours on email. So schedule your life well in advance of when you actually want to live it. That's it. That's all the time I have. But focus on eliminating information as opposed to trying to consume it and organize it, and you'll be much better off for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Timothy.